Alright, so Bloons TD 6 update 33.0 is coming soon, and they just dropped patch notes for it, and I'm gonna go over everything there is to it in this video. I don't normally do this pre-release, but this one's a pretty big one in terms of balance changes, so I'd love to give you my thoughts on those. But before that, features. So this was previously teased a couple weeks ago on NinjaKiwi socials, but yeah. We've got the ACE Paragon, the biggest thing is this update coming, the Goliath Doom ship. Some of you guys might be disappointed about the name of it, and hoped it would be called something else, but it's okay, guys. It'll be alright. Now, just earlier today, NinjaKiwi released footage of the ACE Paragon. So this is taken from the YouTube video. As you can see, it's shooting out streams of darts like the Sky Shredder, with a couple seeking bolts similar to Never Miss or Fighter Plane. And funny enough, they kind of look like Hydra rocket projectiles, which, yeah. Is this the second time a Paragon has taken inspiration from the Dartling gun? Who knows? But on top of that, there's also an ability to incorporate the middle path of it. We see there's a triplet of small planes flying across the screen, dropping, I believe, 8 bombs that stun and damage balloons, according to the video. Not gonna lie, it kind of looks underwhelming relative to like Star 1, which lights the entire screen on fire for a second. Meanwhile, you see these little puny explosions. I wonder if it's still global map effectiveness or that those bombs are just localized, but I believe they have to be global, because it doesn't seem like you can change the path of it. But yeah, that's all the footage we have of the ACE Paragon so far. Leave it up to you guys to speculate what else it possibly might have, or might do, but it seems like it's mostly raw damage. Now, a couple new maps this update. There's Midnight Mansion, the new spooky map for this year, and Covered Garden. This was a Reddit post-inspired map, where the quirk to it was that you can only place towers in one quadrant per round, and then it basically shifts quadrants each round, so whatever doesn't have the glass over it, you can place. Pretty cool map. Can't wait to play it. Now, on to some general changes. I believe this is a really controversial change here. A lot of people I've seen have already been up in arms over it. But you can no longer get more than 3 Paragons in a game anymore, any game mode. I kind of agree with a lot of others when they say it should only be restricted to bosses, because that's, you know, where it makes the most sense. Because you gotta strategize which Paragons you want to drop rather than just drop all of them to beat the boss. But there's no really harm in dropping every Paragon in free play. It just makes it, I guess, more annoying. Because now you can no longer go epic late game, spamming every tower you possibly can. Not that I ever go late game, but I can see the frustrations. This is definitely something I'm assuming NK will revert, just based on the backlash. Anyways, in other news, Contested Territory got a couple of changes as well. First off, with the team store voting. This was really annoying if you wanted to pick 4 relics, but they weren't voted high. You couldn't use it, but now they're going to redo this UI, so good on them. There's also a bunch of other CT changes that I'll just show on the screen right now rather than go through all of them in detail, because again, this is a massive patch note, so I'm going to try to cover the most important ones. So let's talk about free play here. NinjaKiwi increased the amount of money you make between round 101 to 120, just because they felt like the amount of money you gained was just so little, and I agree. I always felt I was making like $0 per round at that point. But now it's up from 2 to 5%, which is a 250% increase, which is pretty huge. I did some number crunching, and I believe right now, you make about 38k between those 20 rounds. So now, you're going to be making extra 54k, which is pretty much like an entire 2 to 5. Pretty significant, especially for those who like to do chimps runs past free play. Now perhaps super deep late game runs are a little bit easier now. Now here's some Dart Monkey changes that Crossmaster fans will love. It's basically a buff. They did decrease the pierce of it from 10 to 8, but they also increased the crit rate, so that it's more constant instead of a bit of RNG from every 4 to 8 shots. Now it's every 5th, so you can predict when it's going to crit. Same thing with the 4th tier. They decreased the cooldown of it, so it's quite a bit stronger now. Fair change. Now, one nerf to Dart Monkey was with the Paragon, so they decreased it from 0.3 to 0.35, so about a 17% attack speed decrease, which is definitely not something to scoff at. I guess I can't disagree that it was pretty strong for it being the cheapest Paragon, but maybe perhaps they could have buffed the Boom Paragon again, I don't know. Apex would definitely still see a use in maps like Hedge, etc. Now for the attack shooter. So first off, Tack Zone got nerfed. At least to Bloons, it now does only 1 damage to them instead of 2. So what you saw there will no longer be possible. However, it still gains the same amount of damage to Moab, so that'll be untouched. They just decide to, you know, make it have a weakness, so you can just drop it and have it be everything if you give it buffs, which is fair. In other cool news, they buffed the Inferno Ring and the Ring of Fire, so they decreased the Ring of Fire Pierce from 60 to 40, but they increased the attack speed of it by quite a bit, as well as the damage from 3 to 5. You almost always want to choose damage over Pierce, because most time, it's never going to get Pierce capped. So yeah, it should be a lot more fun to use now that it's stronger. Same goes with the Inferno Ring main damage, that's up too, even though its mold damage got reduced. Still an overall buff. And also you can now target the Inferno Ring meter, which should be helpful in some cases. And now for a very small change, but maybe significant, Arctic Wind Aura Mount slowed from 40 to 60, which was the main point of this upgrade, not to freeze the water and place other towers on it. But yeah, this is a nice buff since not many people use the Arctic Wind for the slowdown in the first place. Now this next buff is a buff to the Bloon Solver for a late game free play, so rounds 80+. Now the Saram bonus damage is basically quadrupled, because I guess it took too long for the Bloon Solver to pop fortified Sarams like you see here. Takes about a solid 4 seconds. Granted, it's not too much track length, I feel like, but I guess for those short maps, this thing can come in really clutch if you end up popping mobs really late. Can't really complain about a buff overall. Elite Sniper got a nerf. Not surprised because, again, it gives you good damage and a good money-making ability. Lots of changes to Monkey Buccaneers. I'm going to start with the one on the bottom. Trade Empire no longer gives $20 per merchantman, rather 15. But that goes back to 20 at favorite trades. I kind of had a feeling they were going to hit the merchantman for me, because after the Monkey Opus nerf, this was by far the most efficient thing, if there was enough water on the track. So they're just trying to put this more in line with the other farming methods. Obviously, you haven't crunched numbers yet, but someone probably will to see what the most efficient boat farming path is now. Now in other news, Middle Path and Bottom Path Buccaneers got a buff mostly to damage. Overall, these towers weren't really used for anything other than its hooking abilities, but now they gave it some palm power prowess. Can't say I disagree with the change because, yeah, their main attacks are really weak, and once you get to the late rounds, you can't really rely on their abilities to, like, do a whole lot in the rounds other than just clear a tiny couple of blimps up, but that's for an expensive price. Here are some Monkey Ace buffs in preparation for the Paragon. Specter lost damage on the bomb and also got a weaker homing effect, but in exchange, extra Saram bonus and dart damage, which, again, is overall going to be a buff for free play. But what looks really significant is the Flying Fortress. Plus 10 is, that's a lot, guys. I guess they didn't think this thing was strong enough, but yeah. I don't know about you, but pre-patch it already seems to do quite a bit of mob damage, but I'm not one to complain about free damage, especially on the big plane. Now, as for Heli pilot changes, the Apache Dart Ship and the Apache Prime raise their rotors damage and Pierce increased. This is going to be overall a very tiny change because most of the power is in the missiles and the darts, right? And generally, if you want the most damage on your Heli pilot, you won't put your Heli on top of all the balloons. You would put it so that it shoots down, you know, straightaways, like in front of the balloons, for example, but hey, still free damage nonetheless if you mess up your micro, or there's just too many balloons on the screen. It appears they also nerfed the downdraft price, but they buffed the Chinook price by 1.5k, while giving it less money so that more of the, you know, power or the upgrade is in the moving ability with the Chinook. In other news, they buffed the Mob Shove, and they also gave faster darts more of a buff, just to make people use it. Now, if this affects Apache and Apache Prime, then this isn't a nothing change. Granted, it won't be super significant either, I feel like. Anyways, here's some changes on the Mortar Monkey that might surprise you if you haven't played Battles 2. But if you didn't know, all these changes, or most of these changes here, are simply taken from Battles 2. They added a few months ago where the biggest one can now stun blimps. They reason in BT6 that it's because it's similar to the Bloon Solver, which is certainly a fair explanation for it. They also increased the price of it by quite a bit, 8 more K. Yeah, I kind of like what NK is doing in that they're having both Battles 2 and BT6 towers have the same quote-unquote effects on towers, so biggest one stun and the artillery battery extra bad damage. But the way to balance them is just by changing the price numbers, which, yeah, makes about the most sense. Because biggest one still retains that 28k price in Battles 2. Now here's another small buff, Shattering Shells DOT, increased from 1 to 5. I guess that's to make it not fully support tower. Add just a little bit more pawn power to it. Nothing to complain about here. Small changes to Darling Gun here, so I'm going to keep it brief. They just buff Buckshot and also its bad Crosspath 203, which no one will still use. And they just change prices of Hydra Rocket and Rocket Storm. Next. This, I would say, is a big one. So, they nerfed Wildfire again. If you don't recall, this tower got nerfed like 10 times since the start of the game. And this, I feel like, kills it in races. Like, that's 33% less Pierce, and slower tick rate, and slower spawn rate. The biggest issue with Wildfire right now is that if you don't have Monkey Knowledge, then the Wildfire doesn't have full uptime, because there's a Monkey Knowledge that makes it last longer, but they made the spawn rate 1 second slower, so I think there might be some downtime now, even with knowledge that, well, makes it unreliable for races, especially with the damage nerf to it. As for other game modes, well, I guess they added this change that it wouldn't be a freebie to beat all 39 rounds, as you see right here. Wildfire literally just destroys everything. Yeah, this is definitely a harsh nerf to the race community, and the top path buff doesn't really help that. You can now target the Wildfire, which is a nice quality of life, but I'm not sure how many people will really want that in exchange for a lot less Pierce. Also, interestingly enough, they buffed Dragon's Breath, but they nerfed the Summon to Phoenix, because I guess it was too strong in PT6. Funny because they just buffed Phoenix in battles too. Now, last change to the Wizard of Shimmer, radius increase so that it's a little bit more reliable, and it's cheaper too. So it can contend with stuff like 300 sub. Alright, here's some buffs to the Anti-Bloon. The cooldown is a lot faster, every 30 seconds now. That's nice. Ultravision also grants extra damage to Camo Balloons, which is also nice. And I don't know about this change, but they nerfed the Legend of the Night cooldown from 2 minutes to 3 minutes on that portal. I think some people said this was to prevent the cheese of if you had the 5% ability cooldown rate and Energizer, you can basically have infinite portal and thus make it to an infinite round, which I think was an advanced challenge just recently. Crunching the numbers, it sounds like without Energizer, you can't get infinite portals anymore, but with Energizer, it still might work. But yeah, outside of that scenario, this 1 minute nerf still does matter. Especially if I recall my Max Buff Legend of the Night redo, where I pretty much had to use the portal every round. Good thing I did it before this update. This next change is an overall buff. They just changed the price numbers from making Flash Bomb cheaper in exchange for Stigma Bomb being more expensive. But overall, Stigma Bomb will cost the same amount of money. This is a tower that has needed a buff for a long time, and I'm glad it's had it. The Transferring Tonic now has faster attack speed on the bottom path, and also more Pierce on the top path. Pretty weak ability, so hopefully those cross-pathing buffs will help it out a little bit. On top of that, AMD no longer stacks a lot. It only goes up to 40, which generally won't make a difference in most cases when you use Alt Buff, so most of you won't really notice the difference in this. Next up, Druid. So Heart of Thunder, damage increased, same with Ball of Lightning and the Stupor Storm, because I guess it doesn't do enough damage already. But the biggest change, I think, is to the Avatar Wrath. It now gains scaling with Heart of Thunder, which makes it interesting. You definitely still want 015 Avatar, because it still does better single target. But if it's a lot of group balloons, then yeah, this wouldn't be a bad option either. Just NK again, trying to make you think before getting a cross path. Also, they added a targeting ability with the Vines for the Jungler's Bounty, which I guess could make a difference, but most of the time people want it strong anyways. But I can see when last or first could be useful. Here's a couple of changes to towers that are very small, so I'll cover both of them at once. Spike Mines, Fortified Damage increased, and Sprockets got an attack speed buff to the deployment and the attack speed rate. 40 to 50 could make a difference. And looks like Cleansing Foam got the Smart Spikes treatment, so it now shoots rapidly at the start of a round so that you don't get caught with pants down. But yeah, more white stuff to help out. Who wouldn't want that for their defense? Now for hero changes, this is really cool. First off, you can target the cocktail now, which was something I think a lot of people wanted, because right now, it just drops wherever she targets, and if there's no balloon in range, then it just drops randomly. And nobody likes random. But the biggest thing is that Gwendolyn buffs fire towers now by 10%, and even 20% later on in her level, so this should be pretty interesting in terms of late game synergies. Maybe we'll start seeing some fiery combos make it pretty far. As for Ezekiel here, this is largely Battles 2 changes. Heart Stomper now allows you to pop purple balloons, which is very cool and all, because right now, even a BT6, it's a pretty worthless ability. So I'm glad they increased the duration and also decreased the cooldown, so there's some use for it. Also, you can target the sacrificial totem, which I'm surprised this was like, you know, random for so long, but I guess they're finally getting to it. Also, synergy to wizards, increasing the pierce of it. Next up is a change to Adora. So right now, they say that there's no real fortification buster among all the heroes. So they're giving Adora that extra damage, because I guess why not? Definitely nothing sus about these patch notes over here. Moving on. Brickle got buffed. And finally, we've made it to the end, and this is a change to the relics. Balance to them. So, Camo Trap was definitely too strong, so they only give you 1 use out of it instead of 2. Flint Tips was also very strong, so they made the fire overtime a bit slower. Still gives you the same amount of damage, though. As for the next one's Camouflage, Hero Boost, and Going Distance, can't complain about those, because those are pretty weak relics. And yeah, Big Bloon Sabotage, that was changed already, and that is it. If you guys made it to the end, then thank you for watching. Hope the patch note coverage was insightful. And there's no release date on the update yet, but stay tuned, because it's probably pretty soon. So if you want to see that Paragon in action, well, stick around, because you don't want to miss it. Oh, and also one more thing. In the previous patch notes, they mentioned that Dread Bloon would have been coming to 33.0, but it sounds like they weren't able to put it in the game in time. So unfortunately, there is no boss. I'm not sure we'll see it next update, because next update, they're supposed to be planning on a new tower called the Beast Handler. So that would be a really big update if they were to add a boss and a tower. So we'll see what their plans are for the last update of the year. Till then, I'll see you guys next time.